Hey there, you might have known Japan, bullet trains, Nintendo, sushi, anime, Toyota, and much more. Japan isn't just a high-tech country, it is also shaping global culture. As you know, Japan is one of the world's largest economies and global powers. But you've probably heard of its aging population, low birth rate, and an economy that's been stuck for decades. Yet when you look around, Japan still feels clean, modern, and developed. So, what really happened? In this video, we'll break down how Japan rose so fast, the deal that shook its economy, the crash that changed everything, the population challenge, and how Japan still works today, even if it's stuck. So, let's get started. Section 1. Japan was the future. After World War II, Japan was completely devastated. Not only did they lose the war, but they were also hit by 2 atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The country was in ruins. But somehow, just a few decades later, Japan became the world's second-largest economy. So, how did that happen? Well, right after the war, the US entered a new drama called the Cold War, which basically was a long global competition between America and its capitalist allies versus the Soviet Union and its communist bloc to become a superpower and dominate the world. One of the early fights was the Korean War in 1950. North Korea, backed by China and the Soviets, went to war against South Korea, supported by the US and the United Nations. Japan didn't join the fight, but it became a crucial US military base. The Americans poured in massive military orders, and those orders revived Japan's broken-down factories and industries. The US also gave aid money, helped with reconstruction, and provided military protection, which sped up Japan's recovery and fully revived Japan's industries. From there, Japan went full export mode. Cars, home appliances, radios, televisions, and even semiconductors, they were pumping out everything. Wages were low, people worked super hard, and the government worked closely with banks and big companies to steer the economy. The Toyota model became famous around the world. Companies like Sony, Toshiba, and Nikon became global brands. By the 1980s, Japan looked almost unstoppable. Section 2. The Plaza Accord that broke the system. In the 1980s, the US faced huge trade deficits with other countries, especially Japan, which was the rising economic superpower. So, in 1985, the US pressured Japan, West Germany, France, and the UK to meet at the Plaza Hotel in New York and sign the Plaza Accord, a deal to weaken the US dollar and strengthen currencies like the Japanese yen. Now, that might sound like teamwork. Like the US was doing Japan a favor by weakening its own US dollar. But for Japan, this was a complete nightmare. If you've watched my video, Why Do Countries Want Weaker Currencies? Link in the description, you'll know. When a currency weakens, exports become cheaper, but imports get more expensive. So, the weak US dollar made American exports cheaper and more competitive, boosting American business profits. Meanwhile, the stronger yen made Japanese exports way more expensive overseas. The result? Japanese business profits fell as fewer people were interested in their products. To fight this, Japan cut interest rates and printed more money, offering cheap loans to the public. The Japanese saw cheap loans, borrowed heavily, and started pouring money into land, stocks, and real estate. Property prices exploded, and Japan ended up with one of the craziest bubbles in history. For example, at its peak in 1989, a single square meter of land in Tokyo's Ginza district could sell for as much as $1.5 million. In theory, if you applied those prices to the land under the Tokyo Imperial Palace, which is about 3.41 square kilometers, it would have been worth around $5.1 trillion. That's more than the entire real estate value of California, and even more than Japan's entire GDP at the time, and even now. It was wild. And as you know, this was not growth, but merely pure speculation and a bubble. And this was where the whole problem started. Section 3. The crash that changed everything. In the early 1990s, people started realizing how ridiculous prices had become, and eventually, the bubble popped. Stock prices crashed. Real estate prices collapsed. And the banks? They were stuck holding piles of bad loans that people couldn't repay. In situations like this, the smart move is to clean things up quickly, just like the US did in the 2008 financial crisis. It wasn't perfect, but at least they cleaned up the mess quickly, or things could have gotten much worse. But Japan didn't. Instead, they delayed. The government didn't really take it seriously and still poured billions into infrastructure projects to make it seem like nothing was wrong. It was stimulus, yes, but Japan should have focused more on fixing the banks or restoring consumer confidence at the time. Finally, in 1997 and 1998, almost a decade later, banks began to go bankrupt, and the government could no longer cover it up. That's when Japan finally began to respond seriously. But by then, it was too late. The problem wasn't just about the economy anymore, it had already spread into people's psychology. Japanese people were traumatized by the crash. They started saving more and spending less. Sounds good and financially responsible, right? Well, yes. But if too many people do this at once, it can be dangerous for a country's economy. Remember, one person's spending is another person's income. If fewer people want to buy things, businesses earn less money, which means slower growth. This led to falling prices. And when prices fall, people wait even longer to spend, hoping things will get even cheaper. And it just keeps going like that. This is called deflation. So, while many countries were dealing with high inflation, Japan had the opposite, deflation, which can also be deadly. You can watch my video explaining deflation, link in the description. To fight this, Japan's central bank decided to keep interest rates near zero for over 20 years, hoping people would borrow and spend more to boost the economy. In fact, Japan was the first country in the world to ever try something called quantitative easing, or QE. But as I said earlier, the bubble left a deep scar. Many Japanese people were still afraid of borrowing, so they chose to save more and avoid debt. The central bank even tried negative interest rates, at one point, minus 0.1%. But people still didn't want to borrow. So, businesses cut prices again. Wages stagnated. People saved more. And nothing grew. This became known as Japan's lost decade. But it didn't stop at just one decade. Japan's economy stayed stuck for almost 30 years. Section 4. The people are disappearing. Maybe most of you already know that Japan has the oldest population in the world. The median age in 2025 is around 49.8 years. For comparison, the world's median age is only 30.9 years. Also, 1 in 3 Japanese people are now over 65 years old. So, how did this happen? Well, there are a few reasons. But one of the most obvious, Japan's super crazy work culture. Japan has a culture of overwork and stress. You might have seen people in Japan sleeping at the office, on trains, or even on the street, and it's seen as completely normal. With the economy stuck, salaries barely moving, and taxes rising, life feels heavier each year. Some people eventually decide to vanish from society altogether. It's called johatsu, which means evaporation. These are people who feel so much shame or stress from work, debt, or failure that they just decide to walk away from their lives. They leave everything behind and disappear without telling anyone. There are even special businesses that help them do this, called yanagia, or fly-by-night shops. These agencies operate quietly and help people escape their old lives overnight, sometimes moving them to different cities and helping them start fresh. Or there's another trend called Hikikomori, people who withdraw completely from society. Hundreds of thousands of young Japanese have isolated themselves in their bedrooms for years. No school, no job, no friends. Just total isolation, doing whatever they want in their rooms, like playing games, watching anime, or anything else. And they're not lazy, they're tired, disillusioned, and feel like there's no point. That's how bad the pressure has gotten. This has pushed many young people to delay or avoid marriage, because most people can't even take care of themselves, let alone start a family. Raising kids is also super expensive, and childcare support is limited. On top of that, Japan has very strict immigration policies, so there aren't many new people coming in to fill the gap. The result? Japan's population is shrinking fast. Fewer workers mean fewer people to power the economy. Fewer consumers mean less demand for goods and services. And you can't grow your GDP when your population is literally disappearing. Section 5. Why does Japan still work anyway? With everything we've talked about so far, you might think Japan is a disaster. But surprisingly, Japan still works. Trains arrive on time. The streets are spotless. People live long, safe, and comfortable lives. So, how is that even possible? Well, Japan is kind of a paradox. Yes, Japan has one of the highest government debts in the world. Sounds scary, but most of Japan's debt is held by its own citizens and institutions, not foreign lenders. So, even though their debt is over 200% of GDP, Japan has more control and less external pressure. On the global stage, companies like Toyota, Nintendo, Sony, and Uniqlo still thrive. For example, Toyota earns much more from international markets than from Japan itself. But that doesn't mean Japan got away without paying. The bubble trauma changed how people think about money. Families and companies became extremely cautious, saving more and spending less. This made it harder for the economy to grow quickly again. Japan's infrastructure was already overbuilt in the 1980s and 1990s, so they don't need to keep spending on massive projects just to keep things running. And one more important thing, the government is stable. There are no coups, shutdowns, or political chaos like in some other countries. So, you could even say Japan is the world's first post-growth economy, where the goal isn't chasing the next big thing, but simply holding on to what it already has. So, in conclusion, Japan isn't poor or in chaos, but the country is moving in slow motion. While the rest of the world races forward, chasing more growth, more money, more speed, Japan just maintains what it has now. And with aging populations and exhausted workers around the world, maybe Japan's not stuck in the past. Maybe it's just living in a future the rest of us haven't reached yet. Help us keep making videos like this by becoming a member and unlock some exclusive perks too. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.